Oh hello, this is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak. The goal of my YouTube channel is to help you to make home cooking as a viable alternative to fast and ultra-processed foods. And the most important thing about home cooking is to create a flavor that you love. And if you can do that and nobody else can do it for you, then home cooking becomes sustainable. I have developed a fast cooking system to make home cooking practical, efficient, creative, and fun. The word FAST is the acronym of the 4 attributes of the fast cooking system. It stands for flavor chasing, advanced prepping, stir frying, and template-based cooking. Flavor chasing is an important part of the cooking system. In this video, I'm going to show you how flavor chasing works in cooking a tofu dish. I'm going to create a flavor that exactly meets my wife's personal preference. This tofu dish contains the ingredients that my wife enjoyed. And using these ingredients, I'm able to create exactly the flavor that she loves. First of all, I'm going to use some portobello mushroom. I'm going to tell you a little bit about advanced prepping and some of the things I need to prep for this particular dish. I already have the mushroom sliced, so in this case, all I have to do is to chop them up into small pieces. This will allow me to fit the mushroom to this dish. The second ingredient that I'm going to use is some shiitake mushroom. Now, my wife loves shiitake mushroom, and the shiitake mushroom that I use in this dish are dry shiitake mushroom. So in order for me to use them, I have to hydrate them first by soaking them in water. This is extremely flexible, allow me to have mushroom anytime I want. Then the next step is that I'm going to prep them in advance, and one way is that I'm going to cut them up into small strips. This will allow me to use in most of the dishes that I'm going to cook. But for this particular dish, I want them chopped them up into smaller pieces because, again, it will fit the tofu dish much better. So in this case, you can see that I use both advanced prepping as well as prepping right before I cook the meal. But because of advanced prepping, I'm able to make it much faster. The other ingredients I'm going to use is some small colored bell pepper. Now, the reason I do not prep bell pepper in advance because bell pepper has a very short half-life if you prep them in advance, but the shelf life is much longer if you leave them intact. The next ingredient is some ginger. My wife loves ginger. That's probably one of her favorite aromatic to season a dish. In this case, I cut the ginger in small pieces, but I want to mince them. I use a handheld food processor, and it works really well. And after that, I'm going to combine it with the bell pepper because I'm going to add both of them to the dish during the cooking process at the same time. So the last thing I need to prep for this dish is some shrimp. But what I did is that as soon as I walked into the kitchen, I put the frozen shrimp in some warm water right away. And I'm going to use both kinds of shrimp. I'm going to use some regular shrimp as an Argentina wild-caught shrimp. And the reason is because by combining them together, it gives me better flavor. These shrimp are easy peel. You can easily peel them. And then I'm going to cut them again into smaller pieces in order to fit with all other ingredients in this tofu dish. And by having both of the shrimps to add to the dish, it makes it far more interesting. Last but not the least is the tofu. I use a extra firm tofu, and I bought this tofu from the Aldi supermarket. It's a great tofu and at a great price. And in this case, the tofu that I use, the first I'm going to do is that I'm going to cut them into small pieces. And this is a good way to do it. I put them onto a small cutting board, and then I first cut the tofu in, slide it in half vertically, and then I cut them into small cubes. This again will allow the tofu to fit with other ingredients in this dish. The size of the tofu actually is quite important. You don't want them to be too large, but you also don't want them to be too small. But by experimentation, you can decide what size might work well. And this method is good because after I cut it, I flip the cutting board and I put the tofu right back into the container. After I spot season the wok, the first step I'm going to do is that I'm going to saute some fermented black soybean. My wife loves fermented black soybean, and this goes extremely well with a tofu dish. It provides a tofu dish a nice deep flavor. the next step is that I'm going to saute some onion as well, and this is optional, but I happen to have some onion available on hand, so I decided I might as well use it up. The next step is to add the shiitake mushroom. Now, this is referred to as a sequential stir-frying, because using this method, I'm able to cook those ingredients that require longer cooking time by adding them first to the wok. And this is what makes stir-frying so efficient, as well as so diverse. Now, you can cook many different types of ingredients all together, and this creates a kind of diversity, allow you to combine different ingredients to cook many different kinds of dishes by making adjustment to how long you want to cook them. And with this approach, you can cook everything to the exact texture that you want. The next step is to add some portobello mushroom. Now, the reason I add portobello mushroom at a later time because I want to cook the portobello mushroom not as much as I would with other ingredients. This will allow me to achieve the type of texture. And portobello mushroom cook very quickly, and they will tend to be overcooked if you add them too early during the stir-frying process. By understanding different ingredients of the order that you want to add them, it will allow you to create much better dishes. And next, I'm going to add a spicy sesame oil. Now, this sesame oil contains hot oil, which is a good way to introduce both the sesame oil flavor as well as the hot spiciness to a dish. Now, both my wife do not like dish that's too spicy, so using this combination of sesame hot oil provide just the right amount of flavor that we are looking for. And this is a shortcut that allow you to flavor something very rapidly by combining them together. The next step is to add the shrimp. And you'll notice that I add the shrimp at a much later time point during the cooking process because shrimp is easily overcooked, and it is better to add them to the time when the dish is about halfway done. This will allow me to cook the shrimp just right. And the final step is to add the tofu. Now, I add the tofu to the end for a couple of reasons. One is that tofu do not require too much cooking because you can eat them raw anyway. And so all I need to do in this case is to make sure that I warm up the tofu to the temperature of the dish that I want. And that's why I add the tofu toward the end. Another reason that I add the tofu toward the end is because once I add the tofu, I want to stir fry the dish very gently because I do not want to break up the tofu. And now the final step is to season it. I first start out with about 1.5 tablespoons of oyster sauce, followed by about half tablespoon of hoisin sauce. And this will allow me to lightly season the dish. And the last ingredient is the ginger and the bell pepper. It's important to add the ginger and the bell pepper toward the end because by adding the ginger toward the end, you will have the strongest ginger flavor, which my wife really enjoys. And by adding the pepper toward the end, you will have a nice pepper crispy flavor. Now the dish is done. The total cook time of the dish is only about 6 to 7 minutes. And I spend about 5 minutes to finish the prepping, which I need to cut up the ingredients that will fit the nature of this dish. So the total cook time of the dish is only about 10 minutes. Now this dish is an excellent dish. It has really wonderful and complex flavor, as you can see in here. And the shrimp add a nice touch to the dish. In this case, you notice that the shrimp is really used more like a condiment to provide the dish with an interesting flavor. In this case, obviously, the tofu is the primary ingredient. However, the flavor of the tofu is affected by other ingredients added to the dish. Because tofu is almost like a blank canvas, you can affect the tofu in many different ways. So after I finish transfer the dish onto the plate, I'm going to garnish it with some scallions. Now, scallion is a really useful vegetable to have on hand, particularly when you cut them into strips. They have really long shell life. And when you add scallion, it's kind of like an onion. It provides a nice onion flavor. Now, this dish turned out to be exactly how I designed it for the flavor that my wife enjoys. The shiitake mushroom, the portobello mushroom, will provide the mushroom flavor, will provide the umami flavor for the dish. And the shrimp will provide a nice seafood flavor, whereas the fermented black soybean added that complexity to the flavor of the dish. And of course, ginger, which is an important part that my wife really enjoys. So it is one of the dishes that have such excellent flavor. When you finish eating it, you feel satisfied, but you do not eat a lot of it. And the end result is that it will reduce overconsumption. And for this meal, my wife and I ate 2/3 of the dish and still have 1/3 left for me to use for lunch the next day. Tofu is not only nutritional, but it is also great for weight management. I cannot emphasize how important home cooking is in today's food environment where it is dominated by ultra-processed food. And ultra-processed food not only causing the problem with obesity, but it also leads to many different types of chronic diseases. And home cooking is probably the easiest and most direct solution rather than try to consume less calories through selective dieting or use dieting drugs. So I strongly encourage you to look into my fast cooking system, which will allow you to create a meal all from scratch in less than 30 minutes so that it will not affect your persisting lifestyle. So if you want to learn more about my fast cooking system, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So keep on cooking. I will see you tomorrow.